What happens when one of Britain's most beloved actors walks into a television studio expecting a friendly chat and instead faces a barrage of disrespectful questions and condescending remarks from a host who seems determined to humiliate him on live television? In just 46 seconds, a casual morning talk show transformed into one of the most uncomfortable and explosive confrontations ever broadcast on daytime TV, leaving the studio audience gasping, the panelists speechless, and Hugh Grant storming off the set in disgust. The Loose Women studio was buzzing with its usual energy. The panel that day included Denise Welch, Andrea McLean, Nadia Sawalha, and Kay Adams. They were gearing up for what was supposed to be a light conversation with Hugh Grant, who was there to discuss his latest film project. The audience settled into their seats, expecting the charming banter and witty exchanges that Hugh was known for. Nobody could have predicted what was about to unfold. Hugh walked onto the set with his signature smile, waving to the audience as they applauded. He took his seat across from the panel, looking relaxed in a casual blazer and open collar shirt. Denise Welch, sitting in the center position, greeted him with a smile that somehow didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hugh Grant, welcome to Loose Women," Denise began, her tone already carrying an edge that made the other panelists glance at each other. "So lovely to have you here. Or should I say, so lovely that you finally decided to grace us with your presence." Hugh's smile faltered slightly. "Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here." "Are you, though?" Denise interrupted, leaning forward. "Because I have to say, Hugh, you have quite the reputation for being difficult in interviews. Should we be worried?" Andrea McLean shifted uncomfortably in her seat, clearly sensing the tension. "Denise, I think—" No, let me finish," Denise cut her off, her eyes fixed on Hugh. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. You're not exactly known for being warm and fuzzy with the press, are you?" Hugh maintained his composure, though his jaw tightened. "I think that's a bit unfair. I'm here, aren't I? I'm happy to talk about the film." "Oh, the film, yes," Denise said, waving her hand dismissively. "But let's talk about what people really want to know. Your personal life has been quite the roller coaster, hasn't it? All those scandals. All those headlines," Nadia Sawalha interjected quickly, trying to steer the conversation. "Actually, Hugh, I'd love to hear about your character in the new film. It seems like quite a departure for you." "Thank you, Nadia," Hugh said gratefully. "Yes, it's actually a really interesting role because—" "I wasn't finished," Denise snapped, her voice rising. The audience went quiet. "I think it's fascinating how some actors think they can just pick and choose what they talk about. This is Loose Women, Hugh. We don't do sanitized, boring interviews here. We ask real questions." Kay Adams tried to intervene. "Denise, maybe we should let Hugh—" "Kay, please," Denise said sharply, not even looking at her fellow panelist. She turned back to Hugh, her expression hardening. "You've made millions playing the charming, bumbling English gentleman. But that's all just an act, isn't it? A very profitable act." Hugh's face flushed. "I'm sorry, but I don't appreciate the tone of this conversation. I came here to talk about my work, not to be attacked." "Attacked?" Denise laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the studio. "Oh, please. If you can't handle a few honest questions, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews at all. Or maybe you just think you're too good for a show like ours. Is that it? Too important to talk to a group of women?" Andrea McLean looked horrified. "Denise, that's not fair. Hugh didn't say anything like that." "I can speak for myself, Andrea," Denise shot back. "Unlike some people, I'm not afraid to say what I really think. Hugh, you've built your entire career on playing a certain type. The lovable rogue, the hapless romantic. But real life isn't a romantic comedy, is it? Real life is messy. And you've had plenty of mess." Hugh stood up slightly, then sat back down, visibly trying to control his anger. "I don't know what you're trying to accomplish here, but this is incredibly rude and unprofessional." "Unprofessional?" Denise's voice grew louder. "I'll tell you what's unprofessional. Coming on a talk show and expecting everyone to just fawn all over you. Expecting us to ask you softball questions and giggle at your rehearsed anecdotes. That's not what we do here. Nadia tried again to diffuse the situation. Hugh, I think what Denise is trying to say, perhaps a bit too forcefully, is that our audience appreciates honesty. No, Nadia, that's not what I'm saying at all, Denise interrupted. I'm saying that Hugh here thinks he can control the narrative, and that he can just show up, plug his movie, and leave without actually engaging. Well, I'm not having it. Hugh's voice was calm but firm. I'm more than happy to engage. What I'm not happy about is being ambushed and insulted. There's a difference between asking challenging questions and being deliberately antagonistic. Antagonistic? Denise laughed again, shaking her head. You haven't seen Antagonistic. You want to know what I really think? I think you're overrated. I think you've been playing the same character for 30 years, and people are finally getting tired of it. I think you're here because you need us more than we need you. The audience gasped audibly. Andrea McLean put her hand over her mouth. Kay Adams looked down at her notes, clearly uncomfortable. Nadia Sawala's eyes widened in shock. Hugh's face went pale, and then red. He took a deep breath, clearly trying to maintain his composure. That is absolutely outrageous. I don't have to sit here and listen to this. Then don't, Denise challenged, crossing her arms and leaning back in her chair with a smirk. Go ahead. Walk off. Prove me right. Show everyone that you can't handle a real conversation. Show them that the moment someone challenges you, you run away. This isn't a challenge, Hugh replied, his voice steady but strained. This is you being deliberately nasty for reasons I cannot begin to understand. I've never met you before. I've never done anything to you. Yet from the moment I sat down, you've been trying to provoke me. Provoke you? Denise's voice dripped with sarcasm. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize asking basic questions was provocative. Maybe you're just too sensitive. Well, how maybe all those years of people telling you how wonderful you are have made you incapable of handling any criticism? Kay Adams jumped in, her frustration evident. Denise, you're not asking questions. You're making accusations. There's a massive difference. Stay out of this, Kay, Denise snapped without looking at her. I'm talking to Hugh. No, Hugh corrected her. You're talking at me. You haven't listened to a single thing I've said. You've already decided who I am and what I represent, and nothing I say is going to change that. Andrea finally found her voice, and she was clearly angry. Denise, this has gone too far. Hugh is our guest, and you're treating him like he's on trial for some crime he didn't commit. This is supposed to be entertainment, not an interrogation. Entertainment? Denise turned on Andrea now, her eyes flashing. Is that all this is to you? Just light entertainment? No substance, no depth, just mindless chatter and fake laughs? Well, excuse me for trying to inject some reality into this show. Reality? Andrea's voice rose. You call this reality? This is you having some kind of personal vendetta against someone you don't even know. This is you using this platform to be cruel because you can. That's not reality, Denise. That's just bullying. The word hung in the air. Bullying. The audience reacted with a mixture of gasps and murmurs of agreement. Denise's face flushed red. How dare you? How dare you accuse me of bullying when I'm simply doing my job? Your job is to interview guests, Nadia said quietly but firmly. Not to attack them, not to belittle them, not to make them feel unwelcome and uncomfortable. Your job is to facilitate interesting conversation, not to create hostile confrontation. Hugh watched this exchange with a mixture of appreciation and sadness. I appreciate you all standing up for me, he said softly. But honestly, I think it's best if I just go. This clearly isn't going to improve. Oh, so now you're all going to gang up on me? Denise turned on Andrea. I'm the only one here with the courage to say what needs to be said, and you want to shut me down? Typical. Hugh stood up, his hands trembling slightly. I've done hundreds of interviews in my career. Good ones, challenging ones, even difficult ones. But I've never been treated with such blatant disrespect. This isn't journalism. This isn't even entertainment. This is just cruelty for the sake of cruelty. Cruelty? Denise scoffed. You poor thing. A few hard questions and you fall apart. How do you think ordinary people feel when they face real problems? When they can't just walk away from difficult situations? Kay Adams spoke up, her voice shaking. Denise, you're being completely unreasonable. This isn't what we agreed to. This was supposed to be a friendly interview. I don't care what we agreed to, Denise snapped. I'm tired of pretending that every celebrity who walks through that door deserves to be treated like royalty. They're just people. Overpaid, overindulged people. Nadia stood up, reaching out to Hugh. Hugh, I am so sorry. This is not representative of our show or our values. Speak for yourself, Nadia, Denise interjected. My values include honesty and not kissing up to celebrities just because they have a movie to promote. Hugh looked directly at Denise, his voice steady despite his obvious anger. You know what the saddest part of this is? You could have asked me anything. You could have challenged me on my work, my choices, my opinions. But instead, you chose to make this personal. You chose to be cruel. And for what? To prove some point? To feel powerful? I don't need to prove anything to you, Denise shot back. You're the one who needs to prove that you're more than just a pretty face and a posh accent. Andrea McLean stood up now too. Denise, stop. Just stop. This is wrong, and you know it. I don't know any such thing, Denise replied coldly. What I know is that I'm the only one here with a spine. The only one willing to ask the questions that matter. Hugh shook his head slowly. These aren't questions. This is an attack, and I refuse to participate in it any longer. Fine, Denise said dismissively. Run away. That's what you people do when things get uncomfortable. You run back to your mansions and your fancy parties, and pretend the real world doesn't exist. Kay Adams stood up as well. Denise, you need to apologize. Right now. I will do no such thing, Denise replied, her arms still crossed. I haven't said anything that isn't true. Hugh began to remove his microphone, his movements deliberate and controlled. I came here in good faith. I came here to have a conversation. But you clearly had a different agenda from the start. You wanted confrontation. You wanted drama. Well, congratulations. Yeah, you got it. Don't act so noble, Denise sneered, her voice dripping with contempt. You love the drama. You've lived off drama your entire life. Every scandal, every headline, every bit of gossip. That's what keeps you relevant. Without the drama, you're just another middle-aged actor trying to stay in the spotlight. The audience audibly gasped. Several people shook their heads in disbelief. One woman covered her mouth in shock. Hugh's expression hardened. You don't know anything about me. You don't know what I've been through, what I've worked for, or what matters to me. You've created this entire narrative in your head based on tabloid headlines and your own prejudices. Oh, here we go. Denise rolled her eyes dramatically. The poor misunderstood celebrity. It must be so hard being rich and famous. My heart absolutely breaks for you. Kay Adams stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. That's enough, Denise. Seriously, this stops now. You don't tell me what to do, Denise shot back. None of you do. I have every right to ask whatever questions I want. But these aren't questions. Andrea was standing now too, her voice shaking with emotion. You're not asking him anything. You're just throwing insults at him and waiting for him to crack. This is cruel, Denise. It's unnecessarily cruel, and I won't be part of it. Nadia's voice was pleading now. Hugh, please. We're not all like this. This isn't who we are. Hugh looked at Nadia with genuine sadness. I believe you, Nadia, and I appreciate you trying to make this work. But I can't stay here and be insulted. I have too much respect for myself and for my work. Respect? Denise practically spat the word. You want to talk about respect? What about respecting this platform? What about respecting the fact that we gave you airtime, gave you an opportunity to reach our audience? Andrea's voice was firm now. Denise, you're embarrassing yourself, and you're embarrassing this show. Hugh has been nothing but professional, and you've been hostile from the moment he sat down. I've been honest, Denise corrected. Something you all seem to have forgotten how to be. Hugh fully removed his microphone and set it carefully on the chair. Honesty without kindness is just cruelty, and I won't be a part of this anymore. Good riddance, Denise muttered, though her voice carried clearly across the studio. Kay Adams looked mortified. Hugh, on behalf of the rest of us, I am truly sorry. This should never have happened. Hugh nodded at her, then at Andrea and Nadia. Thank you. I appreciate that. But I think it's best if I leave now. As Hugh turned to walk away, Denise called out, Make sure you tell all your celebrity friends about this. Tell them how the mean ladies on Loose Women hurt your feelings. I'm sure they'll all have a good cry with you. Hugh stopped, but didn't turn around. His shoulders tensed, and for a moment it looked like he might respond. But instead, he simply continued walking, his dignity intact despite everything that had just transpired. Andrea McLean turned to Denise, her voice shaking with anger. What is wrong with you? Why would you do that? I did what needed to be done, Denise replied, though her voice had lost some of its conviction. Someone had to take him down a peg. Take him down? Nadia's voice was incredulous. He came here to talk about his film. He was polite, he was gracious, and you systematically attacked him for no reason. Kay Adams was looking at the audience, many of whom were shaking their heads in disapproval. Denise, look at the audience. Look at their faces. They're not applauding you. They're disgusted. Denise glanced at the audience, and for the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. They just don't understand. Sometimes you have to be tough. Tough is not the same as cruel, Andrea said quietly, and what you just did was cruel. Pure and simple. The studio fell into an uncomfortable silence. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every moment of the aftermath. In the wings, your production staff were frantically trying to figure out what to do next. Hugh Grant was already out of the building, leaving behind a storm of controversy and one of the most shocking moments in daytime television history. Nadia looked directly at the camera. I want to apologize to Hugh Grant and to everyone watching. What just happened does not represent the values of this show or the respect we have for our guests. Speak for yourself, Denise muttered, but her voice was quieter now, defensive. Andrea nodded in agreement with Nadia. Absolutely. Hugh came here as our guest, and he deserved to be treated with respect. Instead, he was subjected to a personal attack. That's not journalism. That's not even good television. It's just wrong. Kay Adams added, We pride ourselves on having honest, open conversations on this show. But there's a difference between being honest and being hurtful. What happened today crossed that line. Denise finally spoke up, her voice harder again. I stand by what I said. Someone needed to challenge him. Someone needed to push back against the celebrity worship culture that makes people like him think they can do no wrong. But that's not what you did, Nadia countered. You didn't challenge him on anything substantive. You just attacked him personally. You questioned his talent, his worth, his character. And for what? What did any of that accomplish? It accomplished showing people that celebrities aren't special, Denise insisted. That they're just people who get paid ridiculous amounts of money to pretend to be other people. Andrea shook her head. Hugh never claimed to be special. He never acted superior. Yet you projected all of that onto him before he even had a chance to speak. I've watched his interviews, Denise argued. I know his type. The charming deflection. The witty avoidance. I wasn't going to let him get away with that here. But he didn't try to deflect or avoid anything, Kay pointed out. He answered Nadia's question about his role. He was engaging. You're the one who kept interrupting and attacking." The audience began to murmur among themselves. Some were nodding in agreement with Andrea, Nadia, and Kay. Others looked confused, unsure what they had just witnessed. Denise looked around at her fellow panelists, then at the audience, and finally seemed to realize that she had badly miscalculated. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. "I don't care if you all disagree with me. I said what I said, and I meant it. If Hugh Grant can't handle being challenged, that's his problem, not mine." "Challenged?" Andrea's voice rose. "You didn't challenge him. You berated him. You belittled him. You went out of your way to make him uncomfortable and to humiliate him on live television." Nadia leaned forward, her expression serious. "Denise, I've been on this show for years. I've seen us have difficult conversations, ask tough questions, even disagree with our guests. But I have never, ever seen one of us treat a guest the way you just treated Hugh. It was beyond inappropriate." "Maybe that's the problem," Denise replied. "Maybe we've all gotten too soft, too afraid to offend anyone, too worried about being liked." Kay shook her head. "This isn't about being liked. It's about basic decency. It's about treating people with respect, especially when they're your guest." The stage manager's voice came through the speakers, asking them to go to a commercial break, but the damage was already done. The confrontation had been broadcast live. Millions of viewers had watched Hugh Grant walk off the set after being subjected to an unprovoked and relentless attack. Andrea looked at the camera one more time. "When we come back, we'll try to salvage what's left of this show. But first, we need to acknowledge that what you just saw should never have happened." As the show cut to commercial, the four panelists sat in tense silence. Denise stared straight ahead, her expression defiant, but her eyes revealing something else. Doubt, perhaps, or the slow realization that her actions had consequences. Nadia broke the silence. "I can't believe you did that. I genuinely cannot believe you would treat someone that way." "He's fine," Denise said, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. "He's a millionaire movie star. He'll survive." "That's not the point," Andrea said quietly. "The point is that you were cruel to someone who did nothing to deserve it. And you did it on purpose. You planned it." Denise didn't respond to that. She couldn't, because it was true. From the moment Hugh had walked onto the set, she had been waiting to pounce. She had come into the show with an agenda, and she had executed it perfectly. Too perfectly. Kay looked at her notes, then set them aside. "I don't even know how we're supposed to continue after this. What are we supposed to talk about? How are we supposed to act like everything's normal?" "We do our jobs," Denise said flatly. "We move on to the next segment." "Move on?" Nadia's voice was sharp. "Denise, you just drove a guest off the set. You humiliated him and embarrassed this entire show. We can't just move on from that." The production assistant gave them a 30-second warning. The panelists straightened in their chairs, preparing to go back on air. But the atmosphere had fundamentally shifted. What had started as a routine morning show had become something else entirely. As the cameras came back on, Andrea took the lead. "Welcome back to Loose Women. As you just saw, our interview with Hugh Grant ended abruptly and unfortunately. We want to address what happened directly and honestly." Denise interrupted. "What happened is that I asked some hard questions, and he couldn't handle it." "That's not what happened at all," Nadia said firmly, returning to face Denise directly on camera. "What happened is that you attacked our guest from the moment he sat down. You were hostile, dismissive, and incredibly rude." Kay nodded. "I've been thinking about this during the break, and I keep coming back to one question. Why? Why did you treat him that way, Denise? What did you hope to accomplish?" Denise's jaw tightened. "I hope to have a real conversation instead of the usual celebrity fluff." "But you didn't want a conversation," Andrea countered. "You wanted a confrontation. There's a huge difference. A conversation involves listening, responding, engaging. You didn't do any of that. You just attacked." The audience, still present and watching, began to applaud Andrea's words. The sound seemed to surprise Denise, who glanced at the crowd with a flicker of something that might have been hurt. Nadia continued, "I want our viewers to know that what they saw is not acceptable. It's not how we normally conduct interviews, and it's not how we should treat anyone, celebrity or not." "Oh, please," Denise scoffed. "Now you're all acting like I committed some terrible crime. I asked some pointed questions. That's what we're supposed to do." "Pointed questions?" Kay's eyebrows rose. "You told him he was overrated. You said people were tired of him. You accused him of thinking he was too good for our show. Those weren't questions, Denise. Those were insults." Denise opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. She looked at her fellow panelists, then at the audience, and seemed to realize that she had lost this battle. But she wasn't ready to concede defeat. "Fine," she said finally. "Maybe I was a bit harsh, but someone needs to hold these people accountable." "Accountable for what?" Andrea asked. "For being successful? For having a career? Hugh Grant hasn't done anything wrong. He's an actor promoting his film. That's literally why he was here." Nadia added, "And even if you had legitimate criticisms of his work or his past, there are ways to bring those up that don't involve personal attacks and deliberate humiliation." The studio audience murmured in agreement. One woman in the front row called out, "You were terrible to him." Denise turned toward the audience member. "I was honest with him. Something more people should be." Another audience member spoke up. "There's a difference between honesty and cruelty." "You were cruel." Kay looked at Denise with something approaching pity. "Do you really not see it? Do you really not understand what you did wrong?" "I don't think I did anything wrong," Denise insisted, but her voice had lost its fire. She sounded tired now, defensive. "I refuse to apologize for not worshiping at the altar of celebrity culture." Andrea sighed deeply. "Nobody's asking you to worship anyone. We're asking you to treat people with basic respect and decency. That's not too much to ask." The show continued for another few minutes, but the energy had completely changed. What should have been a lively discussion about various topics became an uncomfortable post-mortem of the Hugh Grant incident. The other panelists tried to move on to other subjects, but everything felt hollow in the wake of what had happened. Denise remained largely silent for the rest of the broadcast, her earlier bravado replaced by sullen defensiveness. She had wanted to make a statement, to prove a point. Instead, she had made herself the villain. As the show drew to a close, Nadia made one final statement. "I hope that Hugh Grant knows that many of us deeply regret what happened today. He deserved better." Andrea and Kay both nodded in agreement. Denise stared straight ahead, saying nothing. The credits rolled and the cameras stopped. But the aftermath was only just beginning. But in that moment, as the studio lights dimmed and the audience filed out, the most striking thing was the silence. The uncomfortable, heavy silence that hung over the set. 4 women who worked together, who were supposed to be a team, now sat divided. Denise had wanted to be bold, and to be brave, to speak truth to power. Instead, she had been cruel to someone who had done nothing to deserve it. She had let her own resentments cloud her judgment, revealing far more about herself than she ever did about Hugh Grant. The lesson was clear. Challenging questions are part of good journalism. Personal attacks are not. Holding people accountable is important. Humiliating them for sport is not. There is a line between being tough and being cruel, and Denise had crossed it completely. Hugh Grant had walked off that set with his dignity intact. He had refused to engage in a fight he never asked for. In the end, his quiet exit spoke louder than any heated exchange could have. He had shown that sometimes the most powerful response to cruelty is simply to refuse to participate in it.